Celestial Piper, Soldier of the Watch, and we have our special guest, Mike, from A Day in the
Hello.
Life of Mike.
Day in the life of Mike.
So he's going to be talking to us about some interesting stuff, and he's got so much information. So we are going to probably be doing 2 parts, and if we have to do more than 2 parts, we can always do more than 2 parts.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun in the pre-interview. I think we pretty much covered
about an hour and a
2.
half ago.
Yeah. It was pretty crazy. I think we broke down some barriers there and added some other ones. And yeah, it was kind of cool.
I'm gonna just roll the ball into your court and take it away. And if I think of any questions, I'll just kind of pop in.
Okay. Well, my whole life has been kind of like this weird amalgamation of experiences, and it wasn't until recently where I finally started to like take a hold of it and try to understand what was really actually going on. But I kind of made a list here. I gave one to Danielle here. Okay, so there's this I'm not sure if it's still on Netflix, but there was this show called Nightmares. Not a show, but like a movie or something, documentary.
Okay.
And my very first experience ever was my first memory, really, because I mean, if I go back thinking, I think that's the very first thing that I can remember. And this guy on that documentary, Nightmares, just hit on everything that I basically, it was my same experience. So my very first memory was of this ET being covered in white. So when I saw ET, you know, when he's all sickly, he looks like he's dying or whatever.
Yeah, it's like whitish.
Yeah. So that was my very first alien experience. So I was basically laying in bed, and I can see my parents from the crib, and this white being is in front of me, and I remember trying to cry, but I couldn't. So I'm looking at this being, and it's just standing there, and the way I associated it was ET in white. And then I'm looking at him, and I'm trying to scream, and I can see my parents. I can't move, so I have this sleep paralysis thing going on, right? And I mean, this is my first memory. This is my first memory. So, and then that's it. I mean, it just goes away. And it wasn't until just recently that I'm watching this show, Nightmares, or this documentary, where this guy, he's talking about his very first memory, and he's talking about these static alien beings that walk into his room. Now he had 2, and when these beings actually come out on the program. Oh, I can't hear you, Celestial. You hit the mute button, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, there we go.
You said static. I found that interesting.
Yeah. So when he said static, I'm like, wait a minute. And then they showed them on screen, and basically like a static screen or channel where it's just like the smoke. That brought so much fear within me because it was confirmation of what I had seen. And then I'm like, okay, it wasn't the sickly ET, it was this. And when you look at it, I mean, I couldn't stop looking at these beings in the program, because that's exactly what I saw. So that is my very first memory.
How old were you?
I mean, I was in the crib. I can't tell you.
And you can remember that?
Yeah, because I was
that far back.
It was traumatizing, because I remember being so scared, and I wanted my parents to wake up because I could see them. I was in the crib. I could see them through the corner of my eye, and this thing is just standing here. I mean, I was just, but I don't think I was naturally afraid of the being itself. It was the fact that I couldn't move and I couldn't speak.
And that's very scary.
Yeah, so I think that's actually what happened, because I was looking at this thing, and then when I tried to call my parents, I couldn't. You know what I mean? So it's just so funny how as a 1-year-old, 2-year-old, I'm trying to like help me, you know.
I can't imagine.
Yeah. So that was
that happening.
Yeah. So I always had this natural fear of like of the word alien and this and that. I mean, here I live like maybe 2 or 3 miles from the U.S. Mexican border. So I remember this one time that I was watching the news with my parents. I was on the floor playing with my toys, and it's like the 10 o'clock news, and they say on the news, they're like, oh, the aliens were caught crossing the border, and I freak out. I jump on my mother, and I'm like trying to hide under her covers, and she's like, "What's wrong? Well, the aliens are crossing the border. How far is the border?" And she's just looking at me like, "It's okay. It's not that kind of alien." so so you so I just I've always had this
Traumatized.
yeah, I'm like something's wrong with this kid, you know what I mean? I mean my whole household, that this particular house, a lot of my experiences happen at this particular house. And I'm not sure if it's the location or there's like a water reservoir not too far from where that house is. And I've heard that a lot of experiences actually happen near water, like
Yep, and courts. And I got tons of it out front.
oh yeah, and from what I've heard, that also a lot of the Catholic churches are built over these kinds of grounds, and there's a Catholic, like a really old Spanish Catholic church that's still standing in that area where well, that house is my grandmother's house, so we were living there at the time,
Where
so
I was
all
married at is there's water right nearby, so I wouldn't be surprised if, because it gets flooded around there,
yeah.
if it's built over water.
Yeah. So then, so growing up, I always had like these weird experiences. Like, I would see things just kind of out of the corner of my eye, and I didn't really kind of, yeah. So, I mean, as a kid, I thought it was normal or whatever. You know what I mean? I would wake up and there would be like blood on my pillow, and I just like, okay, well, I guess I bled overnight, whatever that means, right?
Yeah.
And then my parents also have like a bunch of experiences, and I think that a lot of that I don't think it carried over into to my thinking, but I think it because they were experiencing it also,
Isn't
you
it
know?
like generational kind of thing, or
Yeah, well, you know how they say that
is my mom
aliens,
experienced?
yeah,
So
because aliens kind of abduct through like a certain lineage or whatever. So so that's definitely from my father's side because he actually has an alien abduction story of his own. So back where he lived on his in his old neighborhood, he shared a house. Well, not like a fence, but there was like I don't know how you would call it. The fence had a door, but it had like a little
a gate.
room. Yeah, but there
Yeah.
was like a little room within the fence, but the doors open to each other's yards or whatever. So basically, it was like 10 o'clock at night. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, 10 o'clock at night, and he's going from one house to the other, going through that little room. So he jumps out from that room, and he lands in the arms of these two little grays. And one of them gets him from one arm, the other one gets him from the other arm, and he says that there was two taller ones there, and that
Yeah,
he
and there's tall ones and little
yeah.
ones.
So he freaks out. He hits one of them. He starts yelling. He hits one of them in the stomach, and he's like, I could very distinctly hear the oomph in his belly or whatever. So then he runs inside the house, and he's telling my grandfather that there's somebody trying to there's somebody in the backyard and somebody's trying to take him or whatever. And then he kept saying that in his mind he kept something was telling him that it was his brother and his friends that were doing this, but but he wasn't registering what was actually going on because they have this way of messing with your mind. So when my grandfather went and looked for my uncle, he couldn't find him. And then when he finally showed up that evening, they're like, "No, I haven't been here this whole time. Like, I don't know what you're talking about." and and from his side, it goes into my grandmother. So it's coming from my grandmother's side to my father's side, and then it's going off into my a certain angle right now in my life. So I can definitely tell. I can see the little pattern that it's coming from. So like he used to say, because I asked him like, well, where does this coming from you? Was it coming from grandpa or was it coming from grandmother? It's like, well, it was coming from your grandmother because there was plenty of times that we were in the room watching TV or whatnot, and that she would say, "There's a witch at the window. I need you to go outside." Go because he was already like older, teenager or
Right.
whatever. Go see because there's this lady outside, and then he would go outside and there'd be nothing. And my grandmother would actually go out with him sometimes and be like, I know I just saw what I saw. So like, you could tell something was looking in the window. And I know they have a habit of doing that. I don't think they have to do that, but I've seen them do it. So anyways, so my this is kind of following my father, right? So we're in this in my grandmother's house now. This is I'm already like a junior high or whatnot, and or maybe not, man. I'm still in elementary. But what happens is my dad had this habit of going out on the back porch and smoking some weed, right? Or just go out and smoking, and he would always come back the next morning or the next day and say, hey, I saw some giant possums running in the alley. And we would just look at him like, what are you talking about, giant possums? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I'd just be sitting there, and these giant possums would just run across the alley, and they wouldn't stop. They would just keep going in groups of 4 or 5 or 3 or 2 or whatever, and it's like, I guess this happened often because he would always go out there at a certain time of day,
Wow,
certain time
I've
of
never seen opossums in groups, so that's interesting,
yeah,
right?
yeah. And it'll tie in a little later, but basically we would make fun of him, right? So then my mother one day goes out there one night and sits with him, and then the next morning they're talking about it, and I go and I start joking with my dad like, oh yeah, you've been kind of and my mom's like, well, I wasn't, and I saw them too this time. And I'm like, what do you mean? And so now I'm interested, right? Like, what did you see? So like, well, basically what they look like is tumbleweeds, like fur balls, but they look like they're just rolling down the alley. So that was weird. At that time I didn't really think too much of it. I was just like, okay, well, those giant possums that look like tumbleweeds going down the alley. It wasn't until much later where I had my own experience with possums and what that could possibly be. So then so so that's kind of so my mother had always had like some shadow people experiences in that same house. So yeah, so she would always say that she would see like a black shadow figure inside her room, and that it would be like on her face. I think I know what they're doing when they're doing that, because I kind of tied the fact that shadow people or the aliens can be the shadow people. Or
Hmm.
they Did you know that aliens have a fascination with hats?
Well, that would make sense that people see the shadow people with hats on.
Yeah, that's exactly what I
And
the
then you got the
fedora.
men in black who
Yeah,
wear
I can't remember who it was that made that connection. I'm like, oh, that's what it is, because I've definitely made the connection of the alien and the shadow person. So my mom had always woken up and just seen a bunch of random stuff. I guess because my dad was having the experience, but my mom was witness to it. So she was just kind of observing. Like, she would wake up and she would see all these black spiders. And there was an old show on Coast to Coast with Art Bell and the Shadow People, and
Mhm.
they go into this
I
where
used to
the
watch them.
yeah,
Really fun.
the spiders are the shadow. I mean, it's basically they're making you think something. You know what I mean? So it's not really spiders, but they're making you think that they're spiders. And
Yeah, kind of
she,
like the owls. Like people would say that they would see owls peeking in the window, but when they would have a regression, it was actually a gray.
yeah, it was actually a gray.
Yeah.
They do that, and I want to jump ahead, but I'm gonna keep my little structure here. So so basically, where am I going with this? So
Spiders.
so so I'm just having all these crazy experiences, and then the ones that kind of resonate, or that kind of permeate this fake reality that I feel like we're living in, is when I have witnesses to these things. So there's this one time that we were playing football in the street. It was me, my sister, and a neighbor. His name was Jimmy, and we're playing stop sign to stop sign football, right? So I'm at one stop sign and I'm waiting for them to throw me the ball, and I'm looking at them, and they're just kind of frozen in place, and they're kind of looking up a little bit, and I'm like, throw me the ball, and then Jimmy just kind of points, and I'm like, what? And my sister's like, look up. So then when I look up, I just see a flash. That's
Well,
all I saw. And then I turn back to look at my sister, and Jimmy's already running home. And I'm like, and I start walking to her, and she's just kind of still looking where I was. I'm like, what did you see? Like, I saw a flash. Like, she's like, there was a ball of light over your head. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean a ball of light? She's like, yeah, it was just like it looked like a basketball. It was just floating over your head. and then when you looked up, it just disappeared. So that's what I caught. I caught the
The
thing just disappearing or
disappearing.
whatever, flashing away or whatever. And to this day, I'll ask her, and I'm like, "What was it?" She's like, I don't know how to, it's just a ball of light. Like I can't." And it's so funny how you look into like these Sasquatch encounters, how they're always talking about balls of light everywhere, and like how they like supposedly emit like their own light or something. Uh, Not so much like a flashlight, but just kind of just glowing or whatever. So
Right.
that's kind of what I associated it with. I'm not sure. I didn't see it. I just saw the flash. I can remember staying up that night, kind of going back to the stop sign and be like, "Wow, man, why do you? I mean, I was right there. Why didn't I see it? You know?" So
Maybe you
so
were meant to.
I know. I mean, I saw the thing flash, but that was one of the last times that Jimmy talked to us. That's for sure.
Oh, poor thing.
I know. I mean, you could tell that he was
He's
a
like,
little.
there's something wrong with Mike. I'm
Yeah.
going near him.
And fast forwarding, like we in where my parents currently live, there's always this flash of blue light that will happen inside the house, and nobody will see where it's coming from. But from my current understanding, I hear that they actually travel within the electricity in the house. So yeah, so
I
so
never heard
they're
that, but
yeah
that makes sense.
yeah,
That
because
makes a
I mean
lot of sense,
yeah.
actually, from
Mhm.
the whole ghost hunting background that I have.
Yeah, exactly. So that's that they need a means of travel sometimes, so they'll use the electrical conduits or whatever we want to call it.
Yeah. So they got the ability to get in touch with their inner stuff.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah. And then like I said, like it hasn't been just like aliens, but this one time when I was working at a shoe store, and it had been like a really long day, and my friend had brought me home, and I wish I could have sent you a picture of the house because like everything happens at this house. So basically, we're parked in front of the house,
Maybe
and
part two you can.
yeah, I'll definitely have to.
Yeah.
So
And I
so
can put it into the video and just
yeah,
flash it up at that part.
okay, yeah, he's dropping me off at home, and he's looking towards the house, and on my side is the driveway, and I had already seen a little kitten. It was sitting in the driveway, right? But the hurricane fence was closed for the driveway, but there's like a little sidewalk thing.
Hmm.
That's where the cat sit, the little kitten is sitting. And I'm looking at my friend, and we're talking about the day, and then he's like, "What's that?" And I'm like, I didn't even look. I was just like, "Oh, it's a kitten." And then he's like, "Yeah, but what is it playing with?" So then I turn around and look, and of course the window's up, and I'm like, and I could see that the cat was doing this yarn thing, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm like, I'll roll down the window. So when he rolled down the window, this thing literally turned around and looked at us like this over the shoulder. So
Cat.
no, the cat's still there playing with this thing
Oh,
that did that.
the thing that he's playing with did that.
Yeah, yeah, it turned
Oh, I
around
thought
and
you were telling me the cat like
no, yeah,
mutated
no,
into something.
as soon as the
My
cat
imagination.
yeah, as soon as the cat kind of noticed us, it kind of walked away. But as soon as the cat started walking away, because this thing was kind of like leave me alone, right?
Yeah. So leave
And
me
the
alone.
and
Yeah.
the cat's doing this type of thing. This is a little kitten, and then it starts walking towards the fence, right? And then when it gets to the hurricane fence, and when we're just kind of like, what are we looking at, right? So then it puts one foot into one of the holes of the hurricane fence, and then it just shimmies his body in and keeps walking. Yeah, yeah.
Break dance.
Because it's exactly what it looked like. So I look at my friend, and his name was Edgar. He's like, dude, get out of my car. You know what I mean? So
Freaky man.
yeah, so yeah, it's pretty much. So I get off, and he leaves, and then I'm like, I need to catch this thing, right? So then I open the gate, and I could hear it scurrying away.
What's
And
wrong with you? I need to catch this thing.
it's like a little, it's funny because it,
I'm
it was it was
stupid.
about this tall. It's about action figure size. So it's literally
G.I.
this big.
Joe.
Yeah, yeah, like the one of the original GI Joes. And I never saw a face because it was too dark to see a face. It was like 11 o'clock at night. But we did see the motion and the shadow and everything, and it definitely walked away on two legs. So then when I tried catching it, it had already like hopped into the other person's yard and it was already walking away in the leaves. So it walked away. So the next day I'm like, wow, I need to tell people about this, right? So then the next morning I told my grandmother, and she told me in Spanish, oh, yeah, pues tu abuelita, I mean, tu tía encontró uno. It's basically that my aunt had caught one once when she was little and had put it in a jar and kept it for like 2 or 3 days.
It's like a fairy.
Yeah. So, and then I'm like, well, what happened to it? Like, well, we came back and it was just gone. Like, it was just wasn't there anymore. And I feel like there's this suppressed memory of these things in my childhood, but I don't have access to it because I remember this one time that my parents came home from downtown and they had just bought me like a bunch of little soldiers, right? And they were cool. They kind of looked like Rambo and Arnold Schwarzenegger and stuff. And my neighbor, one of my other neighbors was my cousin. She came over, and she swears that she asked me, "Hey, where are the rest of your soldiers? I want to play with them." And that I responded with, "Well, the little people took a couple of them, and they haven't brought them back, and that I'm really mad about it." I have no memory of that either. But she tells me, no, no, yeah. I mean, she's older. She's like maybe 4 years older than me. But I really like this set of soldiers, and she wanted to play with them, with me, and that I told her like, well, the little people have taken them and they haven't brought them back, and I'm just mad.
Maybe the little people are worshiping them.
Yeah. Oh, who knows, man? I don't know. But, but you
Yeah.
get all these like duende stories, and I have this fascination with like gnomes and stuff. So I don't know how that ties in. And I know I've heard the Edge of Wonder talk about these little people, and there's this guy. I forget. There's so many names flowing through my head.
Well, I mean, you have to figure like a lot of folklore and mythology and things like that. If you really look into it, you find a lot of truth in it. And so we have, fairies and gnomes and elves and all these different things. So it makes you wonder, okay, could these be other beings that we don't see typically because we're
Yeah,
stuck in this
they're like
three-dimensional, and they could
multi-dimensional.
be fourth dimension, fifth dimension, whatever it is.
Yeah. So I mean, I've
I
always I've heard that they're demonic or something. I don't know
That's
about
what
all
I
that.
always, yeah, when I was, yeah,
Yeah.
talking about.
And you know what it reminds me of? I don't know if you've seen that little skeleton of that little person that's floating around everywhere.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Steve Greer had it on.
Yes, yeah. I was gonna say Stephen Gray,
Yeah,
but I wasn't 100% sure.
L.A. Marzulli, he has it. I have his book I got like a long time ago, and it has it in there too.
Yeah, so I mean that's about the size of the thing that I saw. So that kind of puts it into
So
perspective.
that makes a lot of sense because they were saying that that was equal to about an 8-year-old child, and it was probably about this big, right?
No, no, it was a lot smaller than
Like
that.
this big.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but yet it was the bones and all were equal to an 8-year-old child. So that's
Yeah, so
like,
yeah.
wow, you know?
Yeah. But I mean on looking at this little thing, like it looked like you would imagine like a fully grown little person. So I mean, I don't know, but I mean this
I'm
whole this
still
house.
liking his dance moves though, It's like,
Yeah, well, it had to get into that hole somehow. You know what I mean?
shimmy bits.
But that's just something that I remember, like because he just yeah put one leg in, just kind of did this, put his head in, and it just kind of kept walking. So I'm like, oh, yeah. So then a few years later, it was my freshman year in college, and I still didn't have a car. So one of my high school friends was bringing me home, and this is the same house. He drops me off, and it was a time when Jerry Springer was so popular. Or it was just taking off. It was like 1999 or something.
Oh
I don't
yeah.
know.
The more
Yeah,
trash, the better.
yeah, yeah. So I was rushing home to watch it, right? So I had just gone in the house.
What's gonna happen
Yeah,
today?
yeah, yeah. So I rushed into the house to watch the show, and my grandmother was going to the old folks home during the day, so she was gone half the day. So I would make it just in time to watch that, and then she would come home. So then I had just gotten there. I was watching the show, and the whole house is sealed. Like I just went inside the house, sat down, and started watching TV. And then I hear this little pinging, like tink tink tink, and I'm like, I put the TV on mute. I'm like, what was that, right? And then so I just continue watching TV, right? Because I mean I didn't know what it was, and then I hear it again, tink tink tink, and I'm like, what? So I get up, and
It's a
so like
pattern.
now that's a pattern there, right? So I
Right.
get up and I'm like, so I walk into the kitchen, and there's nothing. I mean, there's no draft, there's nothing. So I'm like, what is that noise? So then I look in the sink, and my grandmother had two little angels on the windowsill. Like they were just up there, right? And now they were in the sink. They were standing up in the sink, and I'm like, okay, so I guess they fell, but that doesn't explain how they landed standing up, right? So I'm just kind of like, where is the window open? Because on the other side they had the AC, but the AC was off. So I'm like, well, that makes no sense. So I rationalized it as a mouse or something running by on the windowsill and maybe dropped both of them, right? I'm like, okay, whatever. So I grabbed them and put them back, and then I went back to watching TV. And from my angle, I can barely see the corner of the sink.
And there was no mouse poop, right?
No, there was there was
Because
nothing.
usually you'll find a trail of mouse poop.
Okay,
They
yeah,
just
no.
walk and or run and poop.
Yeah. There was no mice in the house.
I'm
I
trying
mean,
to love mice. I really am. I'm trying to love all creatures.
I just had to figure. I was trying to rationalize it somehow, you know?
I'm just, helping you with the debugging. It's,
Yeah. So I go back to watching TV, right?
yeah.
And then sure enough, it happens again. Dink, dink, dink. And I'm
Okay.
like,
Now that's just weird.
yeah. And then so the third time it happened, I didn't even mute it. I just kind of like,
Notice it
really?
happened in threes.
Yeah, and I'm like, really? And then tink. I'm like, oh no. So I get up and I go and I rush to the sink, right? And sure enough, the two little angels are in the sink again. So I grab them. I'm like, okay. I just wedged them in like a little plant that my grandmother had. Like, oh, and I thought to myself, try moving them now, right? Because I really wedged them in these vines. So then I go and I sit down, confident that they're not going to fall again, right? And if at that moment that I sit down to watch the TV again, that a mug just flies off the counter.
What?
It just flies off the counter.
You pissed somebody off.
I pissed somebody off. It flew off the counter and it hit in the kitchen. I mean,
Somebody or
it's kind of
something.
it's connected weird. Yeah, and it just shattered on the floor. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to work. I'm not gonna deal with this. So I left because I mean, this was happening around the same time that I was working at the shoe store. So I'm like, you know what? I'll go to work 2 hours early. I'll be fine. So I literally, there was like a poltergeist activity, I guess, right? You
I had
consider
that
that?
when I was a teenager.
Oh yeah,
Nice activity, yeah.
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 So my grandmother's husband was a heavy smoker, and I always
That's my mom.
there was always this weird scent of smoke that would come around these types of times. So I always associated it with is it maybe it's my grandfather? You know what I mean? Like I don't know. Yeah, I mean, do you have any experiences with like scents coming from the other side or whatever?
Yes.
Because like it'll just
could always get a pancake smell or a cigarette smell, and none of us smoked.
yeah. I'm not even sure what that is. I'll be driving.
We had a gateway downstairs.
Hmm.
So when we had ghost hunting, but it's like a long story. So
Okay. And so this kind of ties into my well, it doesn't really tie into, but I'm going into the main experience. Okay, so when I was a freshman in high school, I had just started dating my son's mother, and we were high school sweethearts. So I was like 14 at the time, and my uncle had just run up this humongous phone bill for like $800 or $900 because he was talking to somebody in San Marcos by San Antonio up there in Austin.
wow.
Yeah, a girlfriend or something, and that was when like Southwestern Bell was king kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So then I don't know if you remember, but these companies started coming up with, hey, pay $25 a month and you can have unlimited phone access, blah blah blah, right? So I had spent most of my freshman year talking from a payphone to my son's mother, my girlfriend, and I wanted to talk to her, right? So I'd go to the payphone and I'd even hang out there, and I was like, in love. That, you know what I mean? So and talking to her for hours and hours at a payphone. So my parents, like, they got tired of that, so they're like, okay, we need to get a phone for this guy because he's gonna stay out there all night one day. So and it's a good thing they did because it got to the point where I was kind of like just hanging out there I even made friends with like the gas attendants and stuff. You know what I mean? So one day, I get home and my dad's like, "Hey, look, we have a phone now. This is a cordless phone," and I'll never forget it because it was kind of like, ah, you know what I mean? So he's like, "Okay, well, this is our new phone, and just be careful with it because it's expensive." Blah 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 blah. Okay, okay. So then that same day, I called my girlfriend. And I'm like, hey, well, what do you do with your cordless phone, right? You're talking from different places, right? Like, I guess I'm in the restroom now, or no, I'm outside, you know what I mean? I'm on top of the washer, kind of thing. So then, my dad had come home from work that day about 5:36, and this is happening in the same house. So now the car is parked in the driveway, and I go inside the car, and I'm like, hey, I'm in the car now. You know what I mean? So I spend the rest of the night there. So I'm looking inside the house, and right in front of the car, you can see the two windows that lead into the kitchen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I could see my dad eating supper, and then but I'm still talking there on the phone, and he goes to his room, and so now we're getting to this crepuscular light, kind of like the twilight, and my grandmother was a typical old lady, kind of hunched over a little bit. She had this ball of white hair. And as I'm sitting there and it's getting a little darker, I start to notice from the right side of the house. Uh, so basically, I'm in the car. You have the hood, and then 2 feet in front of the hood, you have the house with the two windows, right? And then maybe 3 feet to the right, you have the edge of the house that leads all the way to the back, right? So I'm sitting there, and I start to notice this white ball coming around the house. And I'm sitting at an angle looking away from it, but I had kind of noticed it a little bit. And subconsciously or unconsciously, I just kind of associated it with my grandmother because I saw this white ball of hair kind of coming around the house. So and also right there on the corner on the side was the water for the water hose. So I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, she must be like watering plants at this hour or whatever. But it made no sense because she's an older lady and it's kind of dark already, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah, so I'm just sitting there, and then something just made me look, and so I turn around and I look at her, but it's not her. So what? Have you ever seen the Skinny Bob footage?
The skinny Bob.
Skinny Bob footage, that's what they call it. That is exactly what I saw coming around the corner from my house. So at that moment, I kind of freeze a little bit. So my girlfriend, she's kind of talking. I'm like, hold on, something's here, because this thing is literally coming around the house like this. It has something in its hand. I can see it. It has something in its hand, and it's kind of peeking in through the window like this. So for some reason I don't panic, but I'm just kind of like, what is this thing? You know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
then, so then, when I go, you know what? I need to go out and confront whoever this person is or whatever this thing is, right? Because at that moment, I had only seen, because I'm at a weird angle, so I can only see like this side of it,
Right.
and like maybe just a little bit of his right side of his face. So when I go to do this, I'm like, hold on. I go, someone's here. And then when I did this motion, at that very same moment, a second being comes out of the same corner, same right behind him. He's like basically following him because the first one's kind of looking in the house, and then the second one. I mean, I'm wide awake. There's no. I
Yeah.
mean, when people wonder if aliens exist, I don't have to wonder. I know they exist because I was wide awake. I saw them.
You're
It's
not
like
on drugs.
yeah, I'm not on drugs. If anything, I'm high on, hell, I love you. You know what I mean? So,
La
yeah. So as I'm putting the phone down, the second being kind of turns the corner, and I catch his movement because all you can really see is the white of his hands
Right.
and his head. So when I make this movement, it's like coming around the corner, and then it like does this motion, right? Like, uh-oh, like he saw me do this. And then when he did this, he did this. And when he did that, it locked me. It locked me. And I can remember being locked, and the one in front of me just disappeared.
Wow.
Like it just went down. Like I almost want to say like it just vanished, really, but I feel like it went
Like
down because
like
at that moment things start getting weird in my head. So then I'm like putting the phone down and I'm slowly opening the door, and it's like I'm in a dream now, and I'm like, what? So I'm opening the door and I'm trying to rationalize this as I'm going through it, and I close the car door and I look in front of me and there's a possum, and I'm like, naturally, I'm afraid of possums because when I was a kid, they had killed a bunch of my little kittens, so I just thought they were these evil things. You know what I mean?
yeah, well, they
So
can.
so I'm looking at it, and the possum starts coming towards me, and then the other possum starts coming towards me, and I'm like, wait. And then the next memory I have is my dad waking me up in the morning, and he's like, stop leaving the phone in the car because I'm gonna end up taking it to work, and your mom's gonna be wondering where the phone's at all day, blah blah blah. And I'm like, what? What's going on? And then he's basically saying, stop leaving the phone in the car. So I'm like, and he leaves for work that morning. I'm like, oh my God, what happened? Because my previous memory right before that was being in the car. You know what I mean? Or the whole alien thing. So then, so yeah, so you need to look up the Skinny Bob footage because whoever, if they say that's a fake, that's a master fake because that's exactly what I saw. Down to the
Check it out. And I swear, Mike, if I watch it and it's like something I've experienced before, I'm gonna freak out.
uh, uh, down to the length of the tarsals or the little fingers in their bones because on a later experience I had been in my parents had already moved out, so I was sleeping in their room,
Mhm.
and as I'm sleeping in there, uh, I see a flash of blue light as I'm just laying there, and when I go to wake up, I turned I was laying on my right side facing the window of the wall, and then I saw a flash of blue light. So when I saw the flash of blue light, I go to turn around and I see these tarsals, these fingers coming, and they touch something on my head, and then I go into this like weird paralysis thing, and where you finally feel like you wake up and you're like, what just happened? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, so but what I distinctly remember is like they can't mess with your memory if you record it, kind of thing. You know what I mean? If you see it, they can't undo that. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah, so
like you
so
take
I
it in.
remember seeing that. I remember seeing the hand come this way, and the length. When you see the Skinny Bob footage, look at their fingers because that's exactly what I saw doing coming towards me when because I mean I was basically awake, and when I turned around to look, it touched my forehead or something, and I was out. So so the next morning I called my girlfriend. I'm like, hey, what happened? And she's like, well, you said hold on, and then I heard the door, and then the phone went dead. And then I tried calling you back, but the phone was busy, or it just went to voicemail or whatever it was. And I'm like, okay, so I mean, I know that they exist. I mean, the alien grays. I mean, if you look at the Skinny Bob footage, that is exactly what I saw, like 100%. So when they ask me, I have a lot of like critics, in the family and friends, and they think I'm the alien guy or whatever. But in my mind, I'm like, well, you guys are the weird ones because you don't know they're around. So I mean, I always have that. I feel like a lot of people, I mean, they haven't had these experiences, and why I'm not sure. But after that experience, a lot of the sleep paralysis things started to ramp up. Like I started having more sleep paralysis experiences, and I come to find out later, which we'll get into part two,
I've
is
had
what
a
they're
lot of sleep paralysis experiences.
yeah. I kind of find out what they're actually doing. So they're, you know what I mean. So
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, I'm gonna want to hear that.
Yeah, and I mean, it- when I started dating my, because that was my son's mother that I was talking to on the phone. But then I had an ex-wife. It kind of like follows the females in my life. So I was dating my ex-wife, and we are living in that same house. And she started, her father was a Catholic priest.
Okay.
So yeah, so she was like deeply rooted in.
He left the and got married because they don't usually marry.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So he ended up being the superintendent of Catholic schools for San Antonio and South Texas.
That
So Yeah, so I guess he went a different route or whatnot. But she was deeply rooted in the religion. So she didn't believe in any of this. So when
Right.
she moved into that house, she started having a lot of these experiences. So then there was a couple of times where, because I've been working the blood banking business for like 15, 20 years now, right?
Right.
So there was one time, because I get called at all hours of the night. That's why I'm like, so I can't do it on certain days because I'm literally working 24 hours a day. So
Yeah.
I got called like at 2 in the morning once, and I had to go to drive like an hour from my city. So then I kid you not, like maybe 10 minutes after I left, she calls me back. She's crying, and she's like, "You need to come back home. You need to come back home." I'm like, "Why? What's going on? What do you mean? What is it?" She's like, "Something just hit the bed, and something shook the bed, and like I'm scared. Like you need to come
Oh,
back."
hell no.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Once you get into the zone, you can almost, when you're doing the meditation processes correctly,
Yeah.
you'll know when they're around. And the moments you can feel it and hear it the most is when you're in that right before sleep or right before you wake up mode, because a lot of the cerebral spinal fluid is already made contact with the glands, right? So you're more receptive to the energies that are around you. Like even now, like right before I wake up in the morning, you can tell that when something's around you. You can even, it's gotten to the point where I can hear them jump off of the bed and go straight into the door, and you
Oh,
can hear, yeah, like you'll feel them. The way you need to look at it is like if they're jumping off of you, going through the door, and you hear them like move the door a little bit. You know what I mean? You feel
yeah.
it. Yeah. So that's exactly what I've experienced before, where they jump off of you and they, because I mean, I just feel like these entities are just everywhere now. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
usually when I would have like anything like that, sorry, my dog is like driving me insane.
Yep.
Um, it would be like, dude, you're caught in my necklace. It would be like between 3 and 5 o'clock in the morning was
Yeah.
usually my, which they usually call that the there's a
The
name,
witching
the
hour.
witching hour. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, I guess that they say that that's the time where our world and their world is closest.
Yeah. And there's something to do with the energy too.
Hmm.
But that was back when I like was into ghost hunting and stuff. So there's a lot of stuff I don't remember because I've been out of all of that for 11 years.
Oh.
So, you know, as I
So
practice witchcraft
so
and all.
with my ex-wife, we eventually ended up moving to San Antonio, right?
Hmm.
And there's this famous Bigfoot recording that came out of San Antonio. Have you ever heard it?
I may have, and I'm not, you know.
Yeah, well, there's this certain intersection, and we lived like maybe, oh, I want to say like maybe half a mile from there. And this is where this next set of where this next occurrence happened. So it was literally just down the road. So it's just kind of weird that there's a like the weird Bigfoot sighting just down the street. And I started having all these because the location is on 1604, which is kind of out there. And
Okay.
then there's a lot of woods there. And supposedly two homeless people were sitting there. I mean, homeless people nowadays have phones and stuff, right?
Right.
So they were out there, and supposedly somebody had run over a deer, and the carcass was just laying on the street, and they're sitting there in their tent, and they say that this huge being or Bigfoot just basically walked out of the woods, put the deer on his shoulder, and walked away. So they called 911 because they were scared
So
because they
they're
had
not
never.
vegetarians then.
No, no, this Bigfoot literally took the deer with him. You look it up on YouTube, you find it, San Antonio Bigfoot. It'll come out, and
Right now, you've given me so much to look up. It's not
yeah,
even funny.
you'll be busy for a while. But yeah,
That's good though. It's
it's
good.
basically the 911 call with the lady calling in, and like, and they're scared. You can tell there's something, and she's with her husband or boyfriend or whatever, and he's like, and the guy in the background, yeah, he's way bigger than me.
You'd
And,
be like,
and he's like,
holy shit.
I'm like 6'5" and or whatever, and this thing would just dwarf me pretty much. It's like, and
Wow.
I'm not gonna go into the woods. So that literally happened like half a mile from where we ended up living. I didn't find this out till way later. You know what I mean? So basically, San Antonio, there's a
It
lot of
may have
military.
been the magnet.
Yeah, no, don't say that.
I've just, the reason why I'm saying this is
uh,
that every place that we lived, my husband's dad said, how come everywhere you go, because we would have pictures with stuff.
uh,
Everywhere you go, I think it's Danielle. I think she's attracting it.
no, yeah, I know it is.
And so, you know,
And
saying.
but it's yeah, like it just pretty much everywhere we went, like something happened. And the most memorable thing that happened at this house was this one day that I'm asleep and I hear this static. It sounds like,
I know that's static.
and I'm like, of course I'm sleeping, right? So I'm like, and I hear it on this side. I'm like, what is that?
Did you
So
ever get
then,
buzzing too?
yeah, yeah. Well, it's happening all at the same time. So,
Yeah.
so then I'm like, okay, my ex-wife is right on my right side, and she's laying down facing away from me, and I could feel her on my arm. So her back's on my arm, and I'm hearing this crackling sound over here, and then something responds on this end. So it goes, and then something goes, and I'm like, okay, now what is that? So I try to get up and I can't. I try to wake up
Almost
and I
like the
can't.
movie Signs when they have the
Yes,
little
yes, yes.
monitor. Yeah.
That's more like a beeping sound. This one really
Yeah,
is
but
just static. Like it's
yeah.
just. So then, so then I'm trying to make sense of it, and I can't get up, and then I clearly feel, like because at one point I could feel her laying next to me, but then all of a sudden she wasn't there anymore. But then what I could feel next is like if somebody had put her down. So basically, I felt the coldness of the two hands of her being laid next to me. You know what
Oh,
I mean?
the hands were cold. Oh,
Yeah,
creepy.
yeah. So it was like something laid her back down, and then I heard it. I heard the crackling sound one more time, and then it stopped. So then as soon as it stopped, I was able to get up, and then I'm like, so the room was pitch
So
black.
again, you were paralyzed, not able
Yeah,
to move.
yeah, but I was wide awake. So then when I sat back up, um, I'm just kind of looking around and sitting in the dark, right? And I look towards where my ex-wife is, and I'm like, should I wake her? And she alone on by herself woke up, and she's like, what? And which is funny because this happened so many times, but she's like, what was that? And I'm like, do you fit? Did you? Because now I'm getting some corroboration from her, right? And she's like, well, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? I want her to tell me
Yeah.
what. She's like, well, somebody was in the room. Who was it? And I'm like, oh my god, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know what that was. So that's the way that ended. But my god, it was scary because I know that something was inside the house, inside the room with us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Something was on this end, something was on this end, something put her down. She wakes up. What was that? You know what I mean? I'm like, oh
Yeah.
my god. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I mean that's just a lot of things happened with her. We're no longer together, but what ended up happening is it's so funny, but some reason I've had a lot of cars in my life, so I ended up keeping one of the speakers from one of the vehicles, and I just had it. I would always just take it around with me. Maybe one day I'll put it into one of my other cars or whatnot. And then the I got divorced. I separated from her one night, uh, and that night I had put for some reason I had laid it underneath my pillow, and that night I had the most weirdest experiences. I left basically the magnet part right on top of my head, right behind my head, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. So, it's almost like it was meant to be. So like the next morning, I just, you know what? This isn't working for me. So we ended up splitting like overnight, and I came back down to South Texas, and And that's when my next round of experiences started to happen. I remember I had been at because at that point I didn't have a job. I basically quit my job, uh, came back down to the valley, and I moved into my parents' house. And then as I'm there, plus I mean I started going through this new life experience, right? So then started working out, and and I need to get back in shape, and this and that. I need to get my life back in order, type of thing. So I remember this one time that my dad had like this exercise bike out in the backyard, and so I was out there riding the bike, and then exercising, and then the next thing I remember, I'm inside the house. I'm like, what just happened, right? So I hadn't even noticed. I didn't notice till the next morning, but I had some handprints on my arm, and basically what it looked like, and it was a little further apart than I could reach. So it was like bruise, 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 and then like bruise way over here. But
Wow.
basically what it was is like a hand. And and so I'm like, okay, what just happened? And around the same time, this is when those little Coolpix cameras were cool. I don't know if those little Nikon Coolpix.
Yeah.
My sister had one, and she had been taking pictures in the house one day. And in one of these orbs, it's like a little white orb, you see one of these alien faces in them.
Oh yeah, you can see faces in the orbs. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
that threw me for a loop because I'm like, oh my God, like you need to get this developed. You know what I mean? Like, because you can very clearly see one of these white orbs, and inside it is a face.
Mhm.
And that I don't know.
Yep, I know what you're talking about. That's how we were able to tell when orb pictures where it was actually dust causing it, and when it was and real orb, because a real orb will have what looks like either a nucleus inside it or an actual face, and that's how you could tell. I
Yeah.
I would get pictures of ones that were different colors just pouring over the fence. That's when my husband's dad was like, Danielle's attracting all these.
Yeah. Have you seen the video of orbs at near the Mayan pyramids? Like there's like thousands of orbs like everywhere.
Yeah.
That's kind of crazy if you imagine if like each one of those is like a different entity.
Maybe that's astral travel.
Yeah. I mean, en masse.
And it could be any being,
Yeah. And I forgot to mention before I had left San Antonio, we were staying at this apartment, and I worked the graveyard shift mostly, right?
Mhm.
So I was having the hardest time sleeping. The entire time I was living in that apartment, I must have gotten like maybe 2 or 3 days of sleep. I feel because like it was like constant, nonstop activity for me. Uh, but the most memorable one was I was sleeping, and I wake up, and one of these grays is right here,
Oh,
and he's telling me something, and I'm not
it's
ignoring
really a
him.
hectic thing to wake up to. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
I'm acknowledging his presence,
Yeah.
but he's directing me towards the kitchen where there's these two little ones, these two little grays, and they're like hiding behind a counter, and I'm like mad, like you know what? I don't want to have anything to do with this. Just leave me alone. I'm not sleeping. I'm tired. Like I feel like my life's kind of in shambles right now. Like go away. And these two little grays are off in the kitchen. They're just kind of like and this one's telling me something. I'm like, I don't want anything to do with it. Just leave me alone. Like that's it. I'm done. And that's pretty much when all that had started to end. And then I ended up back here in South Texas. So then when I met my current wife, um, of course she's deeply rooted in Christian belief. She has like a couple of Christian pastors that are her uncles, and
Yeah.
a Christian singer.
Yep.
She's like I think I mentioned before that she's an opera Christian singer. She sings for the local church. So she doesn't believe in any of this. It feels like she thinks I'm going to hell or something. Because you know what I mean.
So that must be really tough in your house.
No, and you know, she supports me. I support her 100%. You know what I mean? But I mean,
Yeah,
it's just
no, but just not being able to be on equal ground spiritually.
yeah.
I know what you mean.
But
'Cause
the thing is, like, I believe everything she believes. You know what I mean? It's
exactly.
just I have like a different understanding of
Angle.
what's going on. Yeah. So
It's
there's really
same
is no
mine as
difference. Yeah. But but because like when you confront a person who's strict in their Christian belief, and you
well.
come at them with something out of left field, is like, no, that's can't possibly mean what it means, and you're going to hell for thinking that. You know what you know what I mean? So that's
Where
kind
there's
of
weeping and gnashing of teeth.
yeah. So then, so then, when I came back down to the valley, I just felt like I had to call on God for help, because like I didn't know what I was doing anymore. Like these things are around me. Like, I need you to help me. I
Yep.
need you to help guide me, because I'm not sure what's going on anymore. You know what I mean? I'm just kind of living day by day, and it's kind of like getting weirder and weirder. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then I started to see like these weird lights in the house, and yeah, so it just started to get like really strange.
Mm-hmm.
And then before we get into the part two stuff next week, there's one primary incident. Now, I've always had like shadow people experiences and stuff, but I never really understood what was going on until I saw this one shadow being. So
Okay.
basically, what happened was it was a Saturday morning, and it was like again right around dusk, well, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning, crepuscular light, twilight, whatever you want to call it. So then I woke up. I had to go to the restroom, so I went to the restroom. I came back and I looked at the clock. It was like 7:20. Okay, so I laid back down. I'm like, should I go pick up some breakfast tacos? You know, because the local gas stations have these amazing tacos, right? So I'm
Yeah.
like, should I? And if you go later, they get, a little bad. So I'm like, should I go now, or should I just wait till a little later? I'm like, no. So I'm just laying there thinking, debating, should I go? Should I get her one? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because my wife's laying next to me, so she's on my left side. She's facing down and facing away from me, and I'm facing up, I'm laying down without a shirt. I had just come back from the restroom, right? And I had noticed the time. It was still kind of dark, and I was laying there with my eyes closed. And then what starts to happen is the left side of my body gets like ridiculously cold, like so cold, because I mean I'm laying near the AC, right?
Right.
The window unit. So then the AC is hitting my body, so it wasn't like freezing or anything. It's
Right.
hitting the right side of my body, but the left side of my body is like
Cold one.
freezing.
Oh wow.
So with that moment when I went to grab the blanket, I
Yeah.
realized that I couldn't move, and I'm like, oh, so I'm like, okay, so this is the normal sleep paralysis, right? That's what I'm rationalizing. Okay, this is okay, right? Like, I can't move, right? But there can't possibly be something in the room because I was just awake. Like, I'm still awake technically. You know what I mean? Like, I'm still, cognizant of what's going on. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
So 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 I couldn't move. So I'm like, "Oh, how long is it gonna take for this to pass? Because I'm freezing, but it's only on this side of my body." But I'm not thinking that way. I'm just thinking like, God, it's really cold. So then I realized that I can open my eyes. So I have my eyes open, and I'm looking around the room, and as I'm just kind of like waiting this out, right?
Yeah. I know what you
So so the windows on this side of my body. So there's a little light coming in from the cracks, and there was a window on this side. So I'm kind of just scanning the room, and as I'm scanning, I just kind of look all the way over my wife this way. But as I'm coming back, I notice that it's a lot darker in the space between me and her. And I'm like just looking at that dark, and like, why is it so dark there? And of course I'm just laying there, and then I start to notice that this thing is moving. So then basically what's going on here is that there's this shadow person kneeling on me and is paying attention to her. So I'm laying there, And so this dark figure is there, and then I'm trying to like, what is that? Because now it's, because the longer you stay in a dark spot, the more form it starts to get, right?
Yeah.
So what I started to see was the body of this, what I'm thinking is the gray. So he's sitting over me and is over her body, and he has this little wand. He
Oh,
has this little wand. Yeah, I don't know if you know, but they're known to carry like these little sticks, right? What I've come to know now as a sickle. So basically, what he's doing is
I,
she's facing down, and it looks like he's painting. It looks like he's painting over her back, the sacrum area of her body, the sacrum. So, because it just basically looked like he's doing this. Well, I've come to find out that he's actually extracting something. He's collecting. So what I'm looking at, he's doing this, like, and he's really intent. Like he's, no, I can see the wand moving like this, and I'm like, oh my God, like this is actually there, and I can't move. Like, and we had just started down. I was like deep in love with my current wife, right? So I'm like, so I go, oof, oof, and this thing literally turns around and looks at me like this, like, you know what I mean?
yeah.
Like it's awake, you kind of thing, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
then it stopped immediately, and it looked at me, and then it literally jumped over me. Like it just turned around, it jumped over me, jumped through the wall. So the last thing I saw was the black foot just trail into the wall. And as soon, I mean, I was like angry because like
Oh,
this has got
yeah.
to,
That's your wife.
yeah,
Don't
this is
touch
good.
my
This is
wife.
this has got to stop. You know what I mean? So it jumped into the wall, and I sat up, and just like with my ex-wife, I'm like looking at her, kind of like, because I'm no longer that cold here, so I'm just kind of like, what's going on here? And then should I wake her up? She wakes up on her own crying, and she's like, oh my God, like I just having the worst nightmare of my life. And I'm like, oh my God, like that's what they're doing. They're creating like this emotional imbalance with you, where you like this negativity,
And
and they're
feeding off
collecting it. Yeah, so
your.
when you're having a nightmare, they're using all that energy and collecting it from your sacrum area. So there's no anal probing going on here. In fact, when as human beings we collect cerebral spinal fluid, there's a sacral puncture that we do to collect it. So they're in that area, not sure where or how or what, but they're collecting it with these little sickles.
I'm no fun to them because it don't scare me.
Yeah. So that's what kind of launched me into this whole other area that I started to explore. So that's kind of,
We'll talk about next time, right?
yeah. Yeah, we kind of touched on a lot of that, so.
Whew. I know we our pre-recording
Yeah, yeah.
we were talking about a whole bunch of stuff, guys. You would all be like, "What?"
Yeah, I think it was a little better when it was unstructured. I was just trying to like go by this plan here that I had, but it flowed a little better when
I
we were
was
just talking.
making fun of Mike about him being so structured. I'm like chaos. And I'm like, look at you. Now I'm structured with some things. Stuff have to be a certain way in my dishwasher.
Yeah.
Forks with forks, spoons with spoons, knives with knives, plates, bowls. I don't want to see anything up on the top rack. Yeah, I
As
mean, we
long as you
gotta
don't
think.
start doing that with your food cans.
Well, my carton of eggs, I'm a OCD. If I have a full carton of eggs and I'm going to take 2 eggs, I will take one from the top left or the other way around, and then on the right side, the bottom right or the other way around.
Oh
But
God.
they got to be diagonal. Yeah, patterns. M&Ms, if I have 2 green left and I only have one each, I got to take the one green one and then go into, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
OCD that way. I have to
Yeah,
get
that
corn in my car twice.
yeah, my daughter has a habit of just walking in there and grabbing eggs and taking them.
No, you kill my system. Yeah.
She's in those terrible two stages, so now she's like able
Oh,
to do things like
yes.
open
She's grabbing them
doors
and
and
like throwing them or fun.
Yeah. But yeah, so
I
those were
have had
those were
terrible news.
a few of my experiences. I guess the most notable thing about that last experience is when it turned around and looked at me, because it was like a familiar gaze, because
Yeah.
like it's like it looked at me, and what it reminded me of was when that second alien had seen me in that other encounter, when he went like,
Yeah.
yeah,
He
that's
was all
kind of
like,
what it was
crap,
like.
I've been caught.
Yes, like, so like it immediately just jumped into the wall, and like it was gone.
SOB.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah. So that's that.
Well, I have to ask you one question before we get going.
Okay.
I had an experience. Remember, I was telling you about grabbing the hair? I
Yes,
didn't
yes.
explain to you what the creature looked like. So I was having a dream that was supposed to be a nightmare, but I was not scared at all in the
Hmm.
nightmare. Okay. So I guess I foiled their plan if they were trying to do anything, using your experience.
Hmm.
But I was paralyzed. I had the sleep paralysis. This was the last time I had sleep paralysis. So it was a few years ago. And this snake-like creature, and the face had it was just a big giant mouth with teeth. So there was no eyes or anything.
Just the teeth.
Yep, just big, kind of like, you ever watch the show Supernatural?
No.
Well, they had these creatures called the Leviathans on there, and that's how they were. When they went to like eat somebody,
Hmm.
that it would just be all mouth. So
Okay.
it's not exactly the same, but similar.
Hmm.
No eyes, nothing, and it had arms with nails, and the rest of the body was a snake.
Hmm.
The hair was reddish blonde, which I thought was interesting, and like a strawberry blonde.
Yeah.
And it slithered up. I watched the sucker, so I'm paralyzed in the bed. It slithers up from the left corner of my bed, up on top of me. My dog sees it, so
Hmm.
it's
So
not
so you
a dream.
so you know it's there. Yeah.
Yeah. And when it came at me, see, I'm a fighter. I'm trying to get my mouth open so I can say, in the name of Jesus, you know.
Hmm.
Finally, just as it's right here at me in my face, my hand's free and I grab it by the head and I'm like, in the name of Jesus, move, you know, and I'm like, and it was gone like that.
Yeah.
And then my dog started barking. So I have to wonder if my dog was sort of paralyzed as well. But I didn't know if you've ever witnessed anything like that or heard anything like that.
Well, I have had a succubus uh experience. What I've come to realize is that it's they're just trying to extract this energy from you.
So she probably
So
was trying to scare me.
or yeah, or trying
Or
to
she or he. I think
yeah,
it was
trying
she.
incubus, succubus. Yeah, they're trying to siphon this. Well, what it is the sexual energy. You know what I mean? If you have any of that repressed energy, then it's like you're sending a beacon out into the ether. So
Gotcha.
they see it, hear it, and they're like, oh, here's a meal, basically.
Right.
Let's go see if
Right.
we can get it. Yeah, yeah. The animals are able to cue into it. Like I know cats, they first see the energy and then they
Yeah.
see you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
That's
like,
why they can see things that we can't see sometimes.
yeah, like my cat, I mean, I'll just be sitting there and I'll feel something, and my cat will just turn and look, and I'm like, ooh, because I know that there was something there at that moment. You
Right.
know what I mean? It,
Right.
yeah, it's just kind of like a corroboration that whatever it was there was there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but as far as the that experience, I have a hard time trying to discern what is a demon and what is a an alien, because they act so similar.
Oh
You
yeah.
know what I mean?
Especially a lot of the grays. A lot of the grays, like people said, when they stare in their eyes, they feel dread. Well, it's a lot like demonic energy too.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe there's not much of a difference there. Like maybe the energy that they have is just the same.
Well, you need to think about it this way. Everything that exists in the outside world exists on the inside world, if you know what I mean. So
Right.
like there's 50 trillion little people inside your body.
Yeah.
Those beings are also in there. So they have a correspondent physical manifestation. You know what I mean? Like a on our size,
Right.
for lack of a better way of thinking. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
I don't know, but it is quite interesting and sometimes creepy and sometimes all the above.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. So that last experience is what got me into the cerebral spinal energy and how it all connects with spirituality, religions, everything.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
can be, I mean, it just kind of that's where I'm at now. You know what I mean? I'm
It
going
could
off of
be a
that. And
rabbit hole. It's like, doom, you know.
mhm.
But that's where I'm at. I'm in the rabbit hole. Help!
Yeah.
Call me Alice.
Yeah. So yeah, about to say that I was in Wonderland.
I'm going to link my sleep paralysis video on this, and then another video that I have about portals and stuff, which has Alice in Wonderland because it's perfect because it links. So I'll have them up on the screen, guys, in case you have not, watched those.
Uh-huh.
This paralysis one was pretty popular because a lot of people experience it. So
Yeah.
yeah. So anything else you want to say before we go?
No, I think I pretty much covered yeah, I was sharing dreams with my wife at one point. That happened a couple times where we had the exact same dream.
That happened to me and my friend Dee Dee.
Really?
Yep.
Oh,
Yep.
okay.
Yep.
So
We
that's
were in
just
each other's dreams. It was crazy.
yeah. I think what it is I mean we're all kind of connected to the same
Yeah.
thing. So when we're in our dream state, our soul kind of it doesn't exit our body, but it expands into the ether. So
Yeah.
then what happens is
It
that
does what we should be able to do, except,
yes,
yeah,
yes,
it's the
exactly.
whole conscious thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So if we're able to do that while awake, then that's the perfect place to be.
There would be no stopping us.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess in the middle of the night your fontanelle just kind of
Yeah. It's like,
opens up a little bit and then you're so because do you listen to Abraham Hicks at all?
no, I guess that's something else I gotta write down.
Yeah. Well, it was a little scary when I first
See,
started
this is
because
how unorganized I am. It's all over the place.
yeah, 'cause
Abraham what?
Abraham Hicks.
Okay.
Basically what that is this lady named Esther Hicks. She's famous. Basically. Uh she started meditating. And what happened was she reached another level of consciousness and consciousness started talking back is what happened. So when Esther asked like what should we call you? Or she's like, well, you can call us Abraham because that is what we would be in your vocabulary basically. That's who you
That with
could
the Bible
associate
and stuff.
that's who you could associate us as. So you can
Okay.
call us Abraham. So that basically she has this thing where she calls it she talks about the law of attraction and how when you're in the zone pretty much your cork floats. So so this ties into the chakras and how let's just consider the cork where you're at within the chakra or
Gotcha.
the chakra within your spine, right? So
Gotcha.
what she's constantly telling us to do is to just let go of all resistance and your cork will float, allowing you to achieve and manifest everything that you're trying to achieve in life or experience. And that's how you do it. Um, yeah, so I think you should
I'll
well
check it out.
what happened was after I had called on God for help, like I need to figure out what I'm doing here. So I that's when I got into the have you read the book The Secret?
Yeah, I did before I came to Christ. And if my door opens behind me, my husband had to come home from work because he's like
Okay.
in so much pain. So
Yeah. So
there
so,
you go. There he is.
so that's how I had started with this. I started with The Secret, but they had left something out of The Secret, and that was the Abraham Hicks part, which is the emotional component that goes along with the thought process. Because the secret is the thought,
Yeah.
but the
Yeah.
secret of the secret is the emotional component.
That's how we got
And
this house.
yeah,
I
I mean
I
that's how
was
you get
into it back then.
that's
Yeah.
literally how you manifest anything.
Yeah.
whether it be your daughter or a house or a dog or a car or a pen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's the combination of the thought and the emotion, which are the two snakes of the caduceus, the
Right.
merging of the merging of the two energies. Sorry, the
Right.
merging of the two energies, and then you're able to manifest because everything around you is just a frequency.
Right.
This a pen is a frequency.
Right.
It has mass, but in order to create that mass, you need to combine all the energies,
Right.
and then it'll come to fruition in your experience.
Right.
So basically that's what Abraham Hicks teaches you, is how to manifest and create things through joy. Because like if you break it down to its most simple message, Jesus is just trying to tell you to be joyful, right?
Right.
And so is Abraham's, like,
Be like a little child.
Yeah, be like a child.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yep.
So I guess that's perfect for leading off into part 2, right?
I think it's great. I think
Yeah.
it's awesome. So, and it was good timing because my husband came home. Guys, keep praying for him. He had first day back to work and he's not doing very good. So if you could keep him in his prayers. Also, guys, make sure if you're not subscribed to Mike's channel, it's a day in the life of Mike, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I got that correct. Go over there and sub. I will, when I put this video up, I'm going to put the link of his channel in the detail or description screen or place, and just you'll get on there, please, and show him some love and hit subscribe. And that'll just help him out. I know there's going to be some of you guys are going to be like, I don't like this topic and blah, blah, blah. And that's fine. Just don't forget to hit the like on your way out.
Well, the last video I posted on my wall was of a trip that I made to the La Sal del Rey. Did you happen to watch it?
Not
basically,
yet. That's the videos I got to go.
It's a salt lake that is here locally, and it belonged to the King of Spain. And what I did was in the colonial periods, when they came, when they conquered the area, basically, the conquistadors, they segregated this body of water that is like a super high saline lagoon, I guess you could call it. It's like a salt lake, right?
Yeah.
And basically they would export the salt and send it to the King of Spain. But what I tied the video with is the Treaty of Tordesillas. And you'll hear Santos Bonacci talking about it a couple times. Basically, what that says is that everything that is on the left side of that treaty line belongs to the Catholic Church, the Vatican, and that includes the entire continental United States. And I tied it into with the UNESCO treaties, the World Heritage Treaty, which basically in 2007 they reenacted that for the continental United States area. So this whole area, everything that's federal land, literally means Catholic land. So that's maybe
don't they really run the world anyway?
Yeah, that's pretty much what it says. And where do all these missing 411 people go? Missing in federal land.
Right.
But I guess that's it.
That'll be another video.
Yeah, that was maybe part 3 there.
That's when I get banned off of YouTube.
Yeah. I kind of debated posting that video too, because I literally put Vatican owns this land. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, you don't want the big V on there.
It's only got like 20 views, so I think I'm okay.
Yeah, maybe they're like, those two aren't a threat.
Yeah.
Oh, I better run, and I got to take care of my hubby.
Okay.
So, all right, guys. Well, hopefully we'll be able to premiere this, and if we premiere this, we get to talk to you guys and answer any questions and stuff like that. We love you. Mwah, 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 mwah. This is Mike and Danielle, Soldier of the Watch. Until we meet again, we'll see Mike again next week. Bye, guys.
Bye.
I'm going to hit the record now. End of the record. Here we go. Bye, guys. For real this time.